A Hamza Yusuf video from 2016 has appeared where he appears to mock the Syrian people for their failed revolution. You know, for a guy living in the West, in America and California, to go, ha 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 ha, oh, how's that revolution looking for you guys? That's pretty callous and, disturbing. There's a reason why he's gloating. I'm going to explain it. I understand where he's coming from. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. My goal is to reach 100,000. Please help me to get there. Do it now. And while you're at it, give a thumbs up. How annoying. I know, it's so annoying when YouTubers say that, but please do it. Thank you. As most of you know, I'm Abdullah Samir. I'm a former Muslim. Yes, I'm no longer Muslim, but being in that community for a decade and a half has given me a lot of insight into it. I was a big fan of Hamza Yusuf and almost attended one of his retreats. I purchased all of his CDs, audio cassettes, VHS tapes, yes, even those things that used to exist. I also bought his biography of Muhammad and I used to share it with my friends. I used to listen to it over and over again as I was walking to school and studying, and I wanted to learn more about Muhammad from him. I loved the man. He seemed like he really had a head on his shoulders. He had a BA and he used to always quote from non-Muslims and sound intelligent and smart. Not only that, he was a convert. Yes, he was a white guy who chose Islam for himself, unlike others who were born into it. That also made him a sort of celebrity. I loved the guy. That being said, I did notice something interesting about Hamza. He used to diss and complain about technology all the time, yet he was always using it in order to promote his material. He used the medium of technology to spread his ideas, yet he also used to complain about it. Unlike some other scholars and Islamic preachers, he rarely ever gave his stuff for free. Most of his content was always sold exclusively through publishers and for quite expensive prices. He wasn't one of those who used to promote Islam and not make money from it. He used to actually benefit greatly from the sale of Islamic content. I personally spent a heck of a lot of money on his stuff. It definitely came across as less generous than some of the other ones, but of course it was his choice. It was his work, it was his ideas, it was his presentation, so he had every right to sell it if he wanted to. Now, let's watch the video. Please excuse the corny content in the background. I couldn't find a better copy.
How's that revolution looking for you? Huh? You know what the slogan of the Syrian revolution was? Who knows what the slogan was? Huh? Sha'b Suri ma bandal. The Syrian people will not be humiliated.
Okay, so?
Again. They're all shouting it in the streets. Now, all these poor innocent people are begging non-Muslims to let them into their countries. They're fleeing across the ocean in boats.
That was a cold, callous thing for him to say, especially as a white guy living in California, where he's probably never experienced anything close to what those guys have experienced. Again, he's gloating, and I'm going to tell you in a minute why he's gloating. Living under a brutal dictator like Assad, who gave all of his best positions to the minority Shia Alawites, while the majority Sunni suffered. You know, it's hard for him maybe to imagine what it's like, you know. The reasons are complicated. You know, some of them include water shortage, farmers not being treated fairly, people moving to cities leading to economic decline, you know, opening up of tribal rivalries, military suppression. I'm going to explain to you why he said this.
Allah can humiliate whomever He pleases. Man ahana sultan, ahanahu Allah. If you humiliate a ruler, God will humiliate you. That's a hadith. In Tirmidhi, if you humiliate a ruler, God will humiliate you. Why? Because the Prophet said, "Al-mu'minu la yudhillu nafsahu." The believer does not humiliate himself. Ahmed Zarruq said, when he attacks a ruler and he's not capable of doing it. In other words, they have power, you don't have power. If you attack them, you humiliate yourself.
Okay, well, now we get to the heart of the matter. First of all, the hadith doesn't say if you attack the ruler and you don't have power, anything like that. He's coming up with some scholar that said that. One of the hadith in Bukhari says, you should listen to and obey your ruler, even if he was an Ethiopian slave whose head looks like a raisin. In brackets it says black slave whose head looks like a raisin. This is what we were taught. Whoever obeys me, obeys Allah. And whoever disobeys me, disobeys Allah. Whoever obeys the ruler, obeys me. And whoever disobeys the ruler, disobeys me. Ibn Majah. And then there's a hadith he quoted that says, which is translated here, he who insults the ruler, Allah will insult him. Now we get to the main point here. Mainly because the revolution failed, Hamza Yusuf is able to gloat like this, saying, see, I told you so. Assad is quite the cockroach. He's surviving. He's not moving. He has his connections with other countries and he has his ways of staying put. He is staying and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. If it went the other way, if the revolution was successful and things were better now, of course he couldn't gloat and say, see, you guys should have listened to the hadith. It's like when a financial pundit makes 100 predictions and he gets one of them right. Let's say, for example, he predicted that Tesla was going to go bankrupt. Then he comes on TV when it happens and he says, see, I told you guys should listen to me. I predicted this. I predicted. You guys should have listened to me. I know best. You guys should have sold the Tesla stock, and no one was listening to me. And the other 99 things he got wrong, he quietly doesn't talk about those. But the one thing he gets right, he goes on TV, everyone wants to interview the guy. Yep, I told you guys this was going to happen. The thing is, Hamza Yusuf really believes that Muhammad said these things and he was talking to God. He's living in a giant world of confirmation bias, where everything that goes right, he'll go back and say, see, this is what Muhammad said. Anything that goes wrong or not according to the teachings of Muhammad, he'll say, well, we're going to have to wait because this didn't happen yet, but it's going to happen. For example, the Muslims are going to be in charge and they're going to establish themselves and whatnot. That's going to happen one day. And anything that contradicts, he'll say, well, we have to reinterpret the hadith because clearly there's a contradiction, or the Quran, for example, talking about the sun going into a milky spring. Well, we have to reinterpret that. He saw it that way. It wasn't actually happening that way. You reinterpret and you remake the facts so they fit what you want the data to look like. He's a presuppositionalist. He has already decided that Muhammad ibn Abdullah spoke to God and therefore everything he said must be right. What's more likely? We already know that the rulers were fabricating hadith left, right and center. They were putting pressure on the muhaddithin in order to say what they wanted them to say, what they wanted them to preach to the masses. A great number of fabricated hadith were being made by these rulers in order to make themselves legitimate. It was inevitable. Religion is the opium of the masses. It's the best way to control people. It's the best way to keep people in line. To tell them that God himself told his prophet that I'm a legitimate ruler and you have to obey me. It prevents them from rebelling against you. How do Islamists and extremists get around this? They do kufr of the leader. They say, no, that leader is not a proper Muslim. He's not Muslim, so we can fight him and get rid of him. And then that's how they justify fighting him under the Islamic context.
You have humiliated. You can blame the ruler all you want. The guy is a bad guy. I'm no fan of that man. I'm no fan of the rulers there. Saddam, I was no fan of Saddam. But now we see the wisdom of why these people were in those places. Because the Iraqis now, Muhammad al-Mahdi, who tore down that statue, was saying he wants to put the statue back up. Right? Zainab al-Kanzi, a Kurdish Iraqi, said, now I see the wisdom that God had in having that horrible man as our ruler. Because you take him away and you look what...
Okay, so technically Assad is not a proper Muslim. He's an Alawi, which basically is you can say, radical Shia sect, radical in its beliefs basically, and that many Many Sunni Muslims wouldn't even consider them to be Muslim, just like Sunnis don't consider Ahmadis to be proper Muslims. So it's surprising to hear Hamza Yusuf defend him in that sense. The hadith are clearly talking about obeying a Muslim ruler. And then he says there's wisdom in putting these dictators here, these brutal dictators, there's wisdom in having them. You're actually thanking Allah for putting brutal dictators that are oppressing the followers? Like, what a strange thing to say, Sheikh Hamza. How are you actually so twisted in your thinking that you're saying it makes sense, there's wisdom in it? You know what this sounds like? This sounds like Stockholm Syndrome. For example, I had one comment that someone left on my YouTube saying, thank God for taking away my cancer, whereas it was actually, God that gave you the cancer and God that took it away. Yet we don't think about the fact that it was actually God that gave you the cancer in the first place, and yet you're thanking Him for taking it away. What a strange and twisted way of thinking. It's like Stockholm Syndrome. How can you thank Allah for giving you such evil people to rule over you? There's no wisdom in that.
Because we're not ready. We're not ready. We don't have civil society. We can't even wait in line for buses. And this is not because Muslims are inferior to non-Muslims. It's not. It's just circumstances. We've been moribund for a long time.
I actually laughed when I heard this because it reminded me of our experiences in Egypt as a family. We had grown women budding in line in front of us. When you go there, you don't find that people respect lines. Everybody is just shoving and pushing and trying to get there first. We were in line at the mall at an amusement park, and here we are, foreigners lining up nicely, kids are waiting, and you have all of these people just like sneaking in and pushing their way through, and as soon as you don't look, another person will come and go, and it's actually funny, but he's right. He's actually right. Like we were wondering, coming from Canada, and we came there and we're like, are you guys civilized? Like, what the hell is this?
We've lost a lot of wisdoms that we had. We have terrible treatment of our women. We don't raise our children properly. We have horrible school systems. We have widespread corruption. These are all the realities of the Muslim world.
So what do you think is to blame for the terrible treatment of women, Hamza Yusuf? Why is it that most Muslim countries have terrible treatment of women? Is that a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that Western countries are much better for women, that when they complain about assault, they're actually taken more seriously, that they have better rights, that they're able to study and work and do all of the things that men can do? Is it possibly something to do with Islam, Hamza Yusuf? What do you think? I think it's quite obvious.
What did the Prophet say? وَلَكِنَّكُمْ غُثَاءٌ كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. You're fluff. That's how he described us.
Okay, so I have something to say about this. You are fluff. So there's a hadith that says that there'll be like the foam or the fluff on the sea. That's what he's talking about. The hadith that says there'll be lots of Muslims, but they'll be weak and they won't be able to do anything. So Muhammad predicted this was going to happen at some point. The interesting thing is, this is actually, in a way, Muhammad's fault. Why do I say that? What is it about Islam and Islamic teachings that causes Muslim countries to fall behind? When you put so much emphasis on fasting and praying and dhikr and all of those things, you will fall back in terms of economic terms. When you put science behind dogma, when you focus and spend all your life learning rituals, learning about wudu and how to perfect it, because Hamza Yusuf loves to talk about on the Day of Judgment, it's not going to matter anything else except if you did your wudu properly. That's the most important thing. And if you did your prayers, right? And you learn and you spend all your time learning about lives of prophets and Muhammad's story and the companions and blah, 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 blah. What do you think that's going to do to your society if this is what you put all your best people and best energy in? When you spent 1 month every year focusing even more on the religious teachings and the religious Quran reading and praying all night, and businesses close early, and companies are not able to focus because the people are tired and they have other things on their mind. When you do this every year for over 1,000 years, what do you think is going to happen? It's obvious. This is because of Islam. Because of Islam, Muslim countries are in this situation. The less Islam that people follow and practice, the better off these countries will be.
So how do we change that situation? It's all there. But no, this is just quietism. This is what the Sufis say. Just worry about yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. What does Allah say? Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum naran. Save yourselves. Because you can't save anybody else if you haven't saved yourself.
Isn't it clear why Hamza Yusuf was chosen by Trump for his Commission on Unalienable Rights? It's because he's a toe the line type of guy. He's a convenient imam to have around because he's all about, purity and self-purification and not involving oneself in politics. The Sufis are even more strongly against this, getting involved in politics, and even Salafis. Although both Salafis and Sufis would say you can't rebel against the leader. This is a Sunni teaching. The Sufis are literally like, hide away and do your dhikr, focus on yourself, purify yourself. They have these things where they want to say La ilaha illallah like 1 million times. They have the tasbih, the prayer beads, or the modern one, which is a clicker. And basically it's all about worship, right? Private worship, and which makes it actually much better for the world because they're not going around trying to change politics usually, right? In great contrast to Islamists, we want to put the political parts first. We want Islamic law and all those things, and those are the things that are important to Islamists. So he's saying, how do we change the situation? How do we change the situation? It's all there. It's all there in Islamic teachings, right? Well, clearly it hasn't been there or working for the last 1400 years. Muslims will say, oh, no true Islam policy or no true Scotsman. That's not Islam. It's because people are not following Islam that we have this problem. Really? It's because you're not following Islam you have the problem? It's because you're following Islam you have the problem. It's not because you're not following it. The solution is quite easy, but it's not more of Islam. Start treating women properly. Stop putting Muhammad's words on a pedestal. Focus on the now. Focus on the problems you have in your society right now, especially the ones caused by religion. Those should be easy to fix. Stop following bad ideas, bad teachings. Get in line with the modern world. Invest in science. Invest in research and education. Teach people to be skeptical, to not fall for conspiracies and to not fall for superstitions. Teach people to work hard and motivate them to improve themselves. Forget the dogma. Leave the fairy tales in the past. You can do better. This is Abdullah Samir signing out.